Okay, 6:30, we'll start by calling the meeting to order here for the Planning Commission. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get started with roll call, the secretary is not here, so we need to move to have a temporary secretary in place for this meeting only.
Okay.
Do I have a motion for that?
It's like, are you? I can do it. I like it.
It doesn't matter. Either one of them.
What's your motion?
We need to have a motion to have a temporary
temporary
secretary for the
secretary.
meeting.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
And Barb, are you going to do it?
Oh, okay.
So I would move that Barb be the temporary secretary for this meeting and this meeting alone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty, then I'm gonna need my agenda so I can get those
Here.
names. Thank you. The names of everybody.
Okay, roll call.
Roll call. Yep, we need a roll call. Okay. Beamish.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Barb, yes. Tuggle, excused. Tawny,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, hey, just for formality, we were voting that you're secretary, now we need to do a roll call.
He said roll call.
Yeah.
I think roll call vote.
We didn't vote, we didn't approve you being,
Oh,
Secretary.
good, okay, go, okay.
so we could probably just do a voice vote on that, but we need to do that, right?
Or show of
Yes,
hands.
we do, yes. All in favor of the temporary secretary, Barb?
Aye.
Aye, okay, motion carried. Oh, we're off to a rocky start here.
Yeah.
No, just shake these off.
Okay, approved. I'll just write that on there. Okay.
Okay, now, for the record. Roll call.
Okay, Beamish.
Here.
Brown,
Yes.
Jones, here. Tuggle excused. Tawny,
Here.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes, here.
Okay, and there is a quorum.
All right, next on the agenda is the absence report. Let it be noted that Shirley did make contact and she is excused. All right, and next we have approval of the February 28th, 2023 agenda.
I so move.
A second.
Barry moves. Second, Brown. Can you roll call on that, please?
Yes. Beamish,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Jones, Walters,
Yes.
Vladson,
Yes.
and Stave.
Yes.
Okay, approved.
All right, next on the agenda is approval of the January 24th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I move they be adopted.
I second. Again, second.
Shall we do roll call?
Yes, please.
Okay. Beamish,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Jones, yes. Tawny,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
Okay, approved.
All right, next on the agenda is our liaison report from trustee Beamish.
Nothing much to report other than waiting on the solar. But again, the board is not pressing for that, they understand. So hopefully we can get that to them or to us by next meeting. I
Okay.
would say, by the time it gets all printed up, I'm guessing if we approve it tonight by the April meeting,
Okay,
since March meeting's in a week,
okay,
we can have.
all right. But we do have time there if that doesn't come to fruition this evening, I assume?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment time, the first public comment time. This comment time is for agenda items only, please. Does anybody have any public comment on agenda items only at this time?
There's no agenda items on any of these sheets.
Well,
That's the agenda.
so,
That is the agenda, right?
yes, that is the agenda.
That's it? I mean, there's nothing on here except what you're going down through now, and there's no agenda items on here.
There's new business, no business.
Correct. Is there any public comment on the agenda items only at this time? All right, we'll close public comment time, first one at 6:36. All right, next on the agenda, discussion of new business. I would like to have a motion to review the rules of public decorum for the Planning Commission.
I so move.
I second.
All right, discussion on this. Has everyone had a chance to look them over?
Yes.
Do we have any comments, anything we'd like to change? This is really just a formality that needed to be adopted by the Planning Commission, separate from the ones that the board has.
Looks appropriate.
Any more discussion?
Looks good.
Question.
Looks very good.
Do I have to read this in? Okay.
All right, with seeing no more discussion, can we have a roll call for adoption of these rules, please?
Yes, you can. Barry,
Yes.
Claudia,
Yes.
Barb, yes. Tawny,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
All approved.
Next on the agenda here is the review of the annual report. If we can have a motion for discussion on that.
A motion.
Second?
Everybody had a chance to take a look at that. This is just the, I guess you would call it the legal requirement of the Planning Commission to submit their annual report to the board for review. Just has essentially, when we had the meetings, what were, approved, talked about, and obviously the attendance.
The commission members are not on there. Is that a hint?
You are not on there, so we should get that corrected.
She sure isn't.
What's Tony's term?
3 years. I was just wondering.
Tawny.
And you just did a new term, correct? All right, so that will need to be, we'll need to put your name on there, and that should have 1/1/23 to
26.
12/31/26. Okay. Good eyes there.
But when you don't see your name,
What are they trying to tell you?
you either.
Right. Any other discussion on the?
25th, not 26th. 3 years expiring 2025, 12/31/2025.
2020.
Yes, you're correct. It would be
Oh.
12/31/25.
225.
Correct.
Was the start of year 23?
Yes.
23.
Yeah, January of this year. Any other discussion on the annual report?
Not for me.
Do we have a motion for approval to send that over
Will they be adopted with change?
and adopted with that change, correct?
Gloria,
Yes.
you motion?
I motion.
I'll second.
Whatever, I'm just chopped liver over
You're
here.
like me.
Oh, did he say something?
He
That's
did.
okay.
He recommended the with change. But
Okay, that's
That's okay. I'm used to being ignored.
oh,
all right, we can get roll call on that, please.
yes, Barry,
Yes.
Claudia,
Yes.
Barb, yes, Tawny,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
okay, okay. Approved.
All right, next item on the agenda is the next step in the master plan review. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? Let's, I guess, start with just the master plan itself. Are there any discrepancies, typos, anything that anybody sees that needs to be corrected from the last version that we got?
I just have an add-on,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman. In the demographic profile of the city as far as home values, ages, I think we should also add, as many cities do, a racial demographic. You know, Native American, Hispanic, Black, white. We probably should have a breakdown simply because some people that come into an area just want to know. And it is included in most cities' information.
Raphael, is that something that we can add? Is that information, I would assume, readily available to us and we can?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Do you have any question as far as what she is asking to?
I'm assuming, Commissioner, you're referring to race and ethnicity, that's usually,
Yes,
okay. Yeah, there's already, I mean, they already have an age distribution on here, you know,
yeah, the age is there.
right.
And,
so-
and when the homes were built, that's broken down.
Right.
You know.
Right. So, yeah, that's totally doable.
Is there anything else that anyone thinks we should take a look at adding, removing typos and whatnot?
This is just not like for clarification or questions, right? Not that part yet.
It's not the end. but-
Correct, no, we're just the master plan right now. We will get to, you're talking about the land
No,
use map or?
I have the whole city of Battle Creek,
Page.
Yeah, what page are you on?
page 4.
Okay,
Basically, it summarizes and says, Bedford Charter Township Master Plan will attempt to support the goals and objectives of the City of Battle Creek Master Plan by suggesting that the city continue to be the commercial and industrial center of the region, while Bedford Charter Township will serve as the important residential and recreational needs within the community center. So I'm just wondering, I guess it just sounds like we're pushing any sort of potential development here with like restaurants or shopping or anything like that to a town or a city that really isn't very highly thought of, to kind of put that on record.
okay.
Just, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people here kind of like the bedroom town aspect of it, but it just feels like we're just drawing a line and saying, we're gonna send that all over there. Am I reading that wrong, or am I?
I mean, no, Commissioner, I hear you, the concern. We can play with that language and, you know, that's fine. Say something along the lines of, support the proposal about direct, but while also, right, fill in the blank. So,
Okay.
fostering business and development and so on. I mean, I just can't think of it right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But there's ways to word it that, it's not, I do hear what you're saying, kind of deferring everything over
Right.
to Battle Creek, instead of sort of pigeonholing, the township. And
Yeah.
I think it's an easy fix.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure if that, because I saw there's no commercial zoning either on the new zoning thing, so I wasn't sure if that was why. Because we're kind of pushing it into that direction, so I just. that
Right,
was
well,
my-
so no, I mean, the reason why there's no, the reason why there's no commercial, well, or future land use that's strictly commercial is because we wanted the township to have the flexibility
Okay.
to, have a, district or districts that sort of would allow a mix of both residential and commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have anything to do necessarily with the neighboring, townships or cities' master plan.
Okay.
I mean, it just really, flexibility for the township in terms of the zoning we get there.
Okay,
So.
okay, yeah, that's awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, that was the paragraph that starts off with the city of Battle Creek?
Yes.
Okay,
And I'm marking these down, Chairman.
wonderful. Is there anything else to anybody in the specifically just the master plan? We'll get to the land use map in just a second. but Try and handle.
Actually, now that we're on the topic, I would like to offer maybe, in addition to the racial, maybe do a family size or household size breakdown as well, so something that, and seeing age, population.
I think if that information is readily available for us,
Well said.
it can't hurt to have it in there.
Yeah, right, I'm gonna make a note about that too, yeah, that's all easily done.
And then on page 9, and the agricultural open space, is there a difference between rural residential and agriculture, like as far as what you can do on that land?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So it says the predominant land use in Bedford Charter Township is rural residential, although some agricultural land has been split and developed for light industrial and residential use. I'm just wondering does rural residential also have like the Right to Farm Act, or is that different for agriculture?
I think what this is saying is that primarily Bedford consists of rural residential homes. It's not a zoning thing at all, it's a descriptor.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I view that just as a description of I guess, the general type of land. I don't think
Okay.
that's necessarily referring to how something is zoned or
Okay,
the-
that's why I was wondering if there was a difference between,
No,
because it does
I-
to say the
In,
agriculture.
in that situation there, I think, Raphael, you're just describing the general,
Yeah, it's a description, and what I would just say is that, in terms of rural residential and open space as a future land use, that does include agricultural uses. That's included in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really just kind of like, to sort of zone, zone in on what, the predominant use is.
Okay.
So large lot, right, sort of rural residential type development. But within the future land use plan and ultimately within the zoning plan, what we're trying to do is to say, that entire white area, agricultural is included in the permitted uses and the principal permitted uses.
Right.
There, so.
Yeah, I was just trying to get, I wasn't sure if that was just, because it went from residential, then the next sentence said agricultural. So I just wanted to, from my knowledge,
Right.
And
my
I think some
understanding.
of this may have come about because when we first started looking at this pre-COVID, which was pre a lot of you guys, the master plan at the time listed Bedford as an agricultural community, which that's no longer the case. Another reason that we employed the firm
Right.
to redo this is because it didn't reflect what Bedford was anymore.
Right, right.
So,
Okay, I think those are my only questions.
okay, anything else, Tom?
I didn't have time to go through the whole thing, so no.
Kevin, did you have?
Perhaps a grammatical thing?
Okay,
On
what page are we on?
Page 13, transportation systems. Third, or the second or third paragraph. Functional classification of roads, should that be roads throughout the county and
Oh,
not
yes.
country?
Well, actually, no, that is actually country, that's correct. Because what this is the federal, these are the federal functional classification. So maybe we could just clarify that is in fact, when we talk about highway, principal, arterial, these are literally sort of the federal classifications.
Okay.
You know, on this, I had a discussion with this internally, at the firm about this, but yeah, that's what that's referring to. So it's country, so I think, you know, maybe table 9, you can say federal functional classifications, or I can make it clear, because yes, it is, these are actually national standards
Okay,
in this case.
thank you.
Anything else there? Kevin?
No.
Barb, did you have any other questions?
What section was Kevin speaking on?
13.
Page 13.
Page 13,
The
sorry.
functional classifications of roads.
Okay.
I had just a couple of small things on page 3. In the regional context, it says we're bordered on the south by Battle Creek Township. Should that be the city of Battle Creek, or is there a Battle Creek Township?
No, there is no
Okay,
township.
all right, so that needs to be changed.
Yep.
And then on page 15, the complete streets, again, this is probably just a technicality, I guess. Township work, will work with the Calhoun County Road Commission. Correct me if I'm wrong, they are the road department now. The commission no longer exists.
Yep.
Again, it's a technical,
Right.
Yeah.
a technical thing, but
Yeah.
we should correct that to department, I guess.
And,
That is what they go by, isn't it, Barry?
I want to just see.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
The county commissioners.
They dismantled that or whatever, and then, yeah.
And Chairman, with that being said, I think that change also needs to be reflected on page 40, take the table of an action plan where we have CCRC, it should be CCRD, and I can make that change.
Okay. Yes, you beat me to it.
Sorry.
It's okay. And then just another, I guess, clarification on page 21. Under the schools, we have the 4 school districts in this township. It says Gull Lake Schools, Gull Lake Community. It should just be Gull Lake Community Schools.
Gull Lake Community School District.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or just Gull Lake Community Schools would probably be fine, but kind of,
Gull Lake Community Schools.
and
Battle
that
Creek
is,
should be capitalized.
same page, Barry?
Same paragraph. Right after Gully Communities, you've got and Battle Creek, the Battle, small b.
Oh, yeah.
Repeat that, Barry, what did you say?
So, page 21, that same paragraph, right after where it says Gully School, Gully Community, and Battle Creek, and Battle is little b, Creek is big C, that just needs to be both
Okay.
capital.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay. No problem.
That is all I have on that. Claudia, did you have anything that you saw?
I do not.
Kevin?
No.
Barry, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, those are the corrections that we have at this time for the master plan itself. On to the review of the land use map. Does anybody have any comments about the changes that we have made via our discussion in the last meeting?
I have some questions. We have a lot of yellow. So my question now is, so my property in this thing is gonna go from agriculture to neighborhood residential. And we have a farm, and we have, verbal agreements with some of our neighbors that if they ever sold, we would have first right of refusal for their property. because we would like to extend the farm. So this means if they sold, I would be buying residential property, is that correct?
Not immediately, but once the new zoning code is adopted, then potentially, yes. It would be essentially, upzoned to a higher density residential. This was done, this was per the request of the commission last time. Initially, as the first draft of this, I think we had that border. I don't remember exactly where, but it was, it might have been down to Cardinal and Markham, but it was significantly further south. My understanding in terms of the commission's request was that sort of, development line, if you will, or growth boundary, let's call it, should be up, up by our drive. It's really up to the commission, what y'all want.
Okay.
The idea here is the idea behind this zoning is to guide growth, and where do you want this growth? One way or the other, you are gonna have legal non-conforming uses as a result of this, right? If it goes further south, then that subdivision up by Dana Drive is going to be a legal non-conforming use within the new zoning, ordinance. Right, if we go further south, go to the north end, your property could potentially be legal non-conforming.
Well, I'm on Kirby Road. And so, the Dana Drive people are neighbors. And so I guess even including them, their question was also, are they gonna lose the ability to do what they want on their property? Because a lot of them are rural residential, and now putting it into neighborhood residential, I assume that means like no chickens or.
Well, we haven't written the zoning ordinance yet.
Okay.
So let me just try and clear it up, I guess. So I guess there's two issues here, and I mean, obviously she has a very specific concern because she has a parcel in that affected area, but I mean, this would be a concern of any resident anytime that we, so, I mean, the clarification, and I guess should, be made that, this is a recommended for future land use. Obviously, there's a process of the rezoning, and we're gonna go through all the zoning ordinances, and, you would change what is allowed, not allowed, but point being, if you own the property currently, you'd just be a legal non-conforming use. It does not mean that if it were to change, she or anybody else would have to comply to what the new ordinance is. And I think that's where the confusion.
Right, so just to take us back through the process, right, Kevin? So basically, if the master plan is adopted, right, and we're talking, recommended to, the next step for the planning commission would be recommendation to, a township board says, recommends for distribution, that's a 62-day review period, right? Then it comes back, then you would have a public hearing, then it gets adopted, nothing changes.
Okay.
Like nothing changes, right? We then start to look at the zoning ordinance, and based, in part of the official land use map, like the chairman said, that's where we start to, first of all, decisions have to be made about what exactly the new districts will mean. What will be permitted uses, what will be special, special land uses, that's its own process. And then from there, right, what the point of this is that this then guides where these would be implemented, right? I would need to just double check to see if it would necessarily have to be in these areas, but it certainly would be allowed, would be permissible, put it that way, for the township to then change the zoning in these areas. So whereas if it's, and everything's really changing in a way, right? Because ag's gonna, there's not gonna be ag, there's going to be, rural residential and open space. There's gonna be commercial, there might be mixed use. So there's going to be changes, but the idea is to make it as sensitive as possible to existing land use, right? And the residents' needs, while at the same time allowing for sort of a unified vision for future development.
So with future development, does that mean like if the neighbor down the street with their like 45 acres wants to put in a housing development, that allows that to happen?
Not necessarily, no. In fact, the way we have, I believe, the way we sort of slated out in the master plan, again, this would have to be fleshed out in the zoning, is I think max density where from what we're saying here is 2-family or 4-family. I don't think there's, at least within what we've written so far, a whole lot. I mean, apart from maybe mixed use areas, there's not a whole lot of room for multifamily, even in neighborhood residential. I'd have to double check to see. I mean, we'd have to look at, if you look, the zoning plan does have this, has some of this. If you want to turn to page, this here, building objective. So, yeah, so the future land use plan, under each of these land use talks about, building and site design. These are still in very general terms, but I believe, I'm just gonna double check. Here.
Starts on page 27.
Yeah, just gonna look under what neighborhood residential would allow. I don't think it's stated. Zoning, appropriate land uses, the appropriate land uses for neighborhood residential areas are single-family homes and 2-family homes up to 4 units per acre. Small apartment buildings may also be appropriate along major corridors.
So 4 units per acre, that is a housing development.
Up to, right, but 4 units per acre. That's-
I mean, my mouth just dropped. That's like 20 people in my backyard.
Okay, but, so
I-
here's the rub.
Okay.
Where do we see growth developing? We see growth developing in that direction. So that means if we're going to encourage the growth, we're going to encourage it in this area for that type of development, not farther out where there is more perhaps viable farmland. You can't grow corn on your property. It's be kind of difficult. Maybe if you sold a lot of trees. The other rub on here is this input would have been beneficial at the last meeting.
Right,
You weren't here.
correct.
Dana Drive, Kirby Bluffs, you look at the Valhalla Heights. Look at where residential is at. It's gonna stay close to Michigan Avenue. Farther from Michigan Avenue is more appropriate for ag if it's there. Not to say your property is not, but that, we're not an agricultural community anymore. We did have a resident right here just past Cardinal. It was, some of this is zoned ag. He had one parcel zoned ag, he had another parcel that was residential. He was wanting to rezone that one to ag and do marijuana grow. This neighborhood isn't consistent with that.
Right.
The same way the folks, so right here across from Cardinal, there's a decent sized chunk of land, and that's ag. So
I mean,
he
can we
could
do
have
like
bought
a
that up
size
and
limit or something?
What's
Like,
that?
I mean, can we do like a size limit or like, I know because there's like townships that will do like 5 acres and then more is considered, because it's just the right to farm stuff. And I know we have a lot of people who are coming to us asking for us to help them set up their farms.
I mean, I would also say that, a lot of that is heavily wooded, so we should also balance it. I mean, so it's up to 4 units an acre. What would be, you're not just gonna have somebody come in and wanna, spend $500,000, to put in a road for 4 houses and, clear all the tree, like, there is I think that some of that land would actually not probably be developed in that way just because of, the overall cost or the possibility of the overall cost. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, we shouldn't, make the rule for the exception, I guess.
Well, yeah,
as
I'm
far
not,
as that
I
goes.
mean, I feel like I'm just an example of, because again, we
Sure.
have a lot of people who are coming to us, asking us how to do this, and they're like, forest raising farm stuff is like, it's an actual thing. So there's just a lot of land there that,
Commissioner, where are we talking about? Can you just show me on the map exactly where you're
Yep.
talking about? So, get a sense.
Mark that up. So she is
Right here.
talking about,
it's basically, I mean,
you're the long parcel,
we,
correct?
yeah,
Tony?
we're right here, but we have a
Yep.
neighbor who just moved in over here who's trying to develop something.
Which one?
It's right over.
So
Versus
They
Dillon.
took it
we're
up to
specifically
us.
talking about this this
Okay,
area
that's
right here,
Russell's
is where
Grave.
she's at. But
Okay.
just this
No,
corner
just
in
this.
particular.
Right.
But these are,
Right,
this is like
okay,
another
okay.
meter right
But-
here.
I mean, I would also
These
say
people are
that
trying to do something with the animals.
there's
So
a
it's
lot
just-
of those parcels are already, probably too small to even do anything.
Oh, I don't
you
disagree
know.
with that at all. There's a lot that are smaller, but if you have, 45 acres, that shouldn't be neighborhood residential.
But does anybody have 45 acres?
Yes, this is actually one property right here.
And they're, yeah, landlocked, looks like.
Well,
With the
they,
exception
them
of
right here.
yours, right.
And then, so they bought this, and then technically like
Are you talking those parcels over by Hilltop?
across from Hunter Ridge.
That one large one to the, would
Yeah,
be to
so
the
it's-
south?
It's this one right here,
Mhm.
but this is also part of it. So this is their whole, like 45. It might actually be 65, but I think it's 45. So like they back up to us, if that, I mean, and then these people had talked about sharing land with them. They share access to the stream over here. I mean, it's like a whole. Then there's all of these people here, this is a whole family like plot this has been the generational thing.
Right, but they're separate parcels.
Yes, technically, but it's one whole family thing. They keep it in their generations.
I think you're really more on a personal basis rather than looking at the scope of things in general. If you look at the size of these parcels, they're on a
Yeah.
line from Kirby south, they're all typically smaller. You do have bigger parcels farther north. The scope of this is looking long-term. And we aren't an
Yeah.
agricultural community any longer. If you have 5 or 10 acres, I think you're still able to do what you want to do as far as hobby farm, that sort of thing.
If that's like a clarification, then that's one thing. I just want to make sure that we're not, people who are already ag, losing that is a big deal.
You're not losing ag, you're still taxed on the use of your land, whether you've got 100 acres and your house is in the middle of it. If you're not growing a crop, if you're not raising pigs, corn, whatever,
But if you
you're
decide
paying
to
it
do
as
that-
residential. Doesn't matter if you decide to. If you're not using it you're not taxed on it as agricultural. Doesn't mean you can't do it.
Okay, as long as you have the right, that's my only thing.
And nobody's talking about any rights of the landowner going away. This is really just because of its proximity to Michigan Avenue and the fact that there is, so if you were to take that little block there, and you already have all the, basically medium-density residential down there on Cardinal. You've got
Right.
Valhalla Heights, Kirby Bluffs it's on the other side, but it's very close. You've got Hilltop. A large portion of that block is already basically being used for, the residential use.
Right.
So it makes sense to allow future use of the other parcels if they decided to do that,
Right.
and obviously, correct me if I'm wrong here, Raphael, but I mean, you're gonna rezone it, there'll be requirements of what you can do and what you can't do. It's not, they're not gonna be able to put a house every 10 feet, or whatever, I mean,
What about the people that's already got animals such as horses? There's horses along that route.
so, again, they're.
Already.
You'll always be a legal, non-conforming use.
Commissioner, when you say your neighbor's gonna be asking how to set up farms, can you just elaborate on that? What does that mean exactly?
Because we have the forest, a whole bunch of woods and stuff, it's not an easy thing to do. So we have people coming and doing tours of our farm. We have a neighbor in front of us that we're helping set up some of this fencing. He doesn't have as much woods, but he does have woods. So he's, they're just, we even just had the state of Michigan come and try to figure out how to help us with the farming in the forest. And so it's not an easy thing to do. You're trying to do fences in between trees. But we're learning, and because we're learning, people are asking questions and coming to us about it, so.
So this is, what I'm trying to understand, and it's been a long time since I studied sustainable agriculture, but, undergrad. But it sounds like you're talking about, so instead of sort of a monocultural type thing, you're talking about kind of doing a sort of a mixed growth, but, leaving existing growth and planting, sort of planting sort of an organic planting around some of the existing growth, but using sort of shade tolerant crops.
Yeah.
Is that?
So they'll, I'm still learning. I'm still learning, but there's a specific name for it. But there are people that are doing it in other states, and that's what we finally realized that we actually were doing something specific. And so now people are asking us about it, and we take down, we have taken down some trees to allow for, not so much shade in there. But because of where we are, we have other neighbors who are asking about that, the goats, and they can eat all the brush and weeds in there and stuff like that. So then we have pigs that are also foragers. So, and again, it is about me because we do have a property but I just, even the Dana Drive people, they have, 3 acres or whatever, and so there was concern, so I said, I'm just asking, because, I don't know, it just went really yellow.
I would say to this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just to try and, I guess, we're discussing it. Is there is there any reason that you feel like that is not the appropriate way for, us to try and have expansion?
No, I think just.
I know it's very
neighborhood
personal, I can understand that,
but
sure.
Neighborhood residential is kind of a scary term when you go from agriculture, I think, because you have more freedom on your property to do anything with agriculture than you do neighborhood residential. So, and coming from a place where, you could sneeze and your neighbors could hear you, to here, I feel like I want to kind of protect what I moved into versus allowing too much of that development. Again, I'm the same person who just asked for commercial, dining and shopping and stuff like that. So I want it close, but not that close.
And if I may, Chairman, my only thing I would say is that, 2 things. First of all, this does get revisited every 5 years. This is
Right.
not set in stone. A. B, this is really much the vision of the township, right? And how far north do you want that
Right.
growth? Do you want it further south? So, and that can always be, that border can be moved, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And I get what you're saying about the size of the parcels. Like, I see that. So, and again, I see it. It's just, I think the words neighborhood residential, that makes it sound like I'm moving back to the city. And
Bite your tongue.
I know. I miss it at times. The convenience is nice, but.
Are there any other concerns that you specifically
No, that
have?
was, I just wanted clarification, but I know it's not the final draft either, so I can learn more.
Okay. Is there anything else on any of the other, so I just, obviously we extended the mixed use down on Michigan Avenue. That looks like it is on the map correctly per what we were talking about there. And that is just for it's the 150-foot setback on that, correct?
correct. From the property line.
From the,
Yeah,
right,
Not from the center line, but from the
correct,
property line.
yep.
On the other side of Michigan Avenue.
And then we also have that same extension up on the north end of the village there.
I know there was discussion about possibly extending it all the way up to Hamilton, but But upon, the mixed use is 2 lanes, but upon sort of looking at the aerial, it was clear that a lot of that is really limited to residential. So, we went, when it included an additional parcel, sort of that, just north of U Drive, that intersection, I don't know what street that is. But we kept everything sort of north of that up until Hamilton neighborhood residential, just in keeping with sort of the current land use pattern.
So that is a little bit of a change from what we had discussed. I think we were talking about just taking it quite a ways. Is there any comment or discussion on that?
I think that stretch from Meacham to Hamilton, well, all the way to Banfield, could be continued to be developed. I mean, you've already got quasi strip mall there, north of Meacham,
Yes,
Down Monument,
yes.
there's another
North
business
of
there,
Hamilton.
you've got, there was an old service station along through there. Of course, closer to Banfield, you've got the bar, and then the old grocery store and taxidermy shop. I think it's,
Across the street is swampland.
yeah, and we already talked about excluding the east side of M37 because of that.
Guess I'm kind of surprised we don't have it down here.
So Raphael, when you made that change, just including that one parcel to the north, I mean, maybe
That's all houses.
we were not, we didn't give you the accurate information. There is already some business activity within that side there.
What are we talking about, east or west?
So it would be on the west side of the road,
Mhm.
because we're gonna exclude the east side because it's swampland.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I would say there's, I don't know, looks like half a dozen parcels that are real close together right there. Those are houses, but there is the little strip mall, monument, hair salon there that's just north of Meacham. Then you have those, the I don't know, 6 or 7 residences, maybe it's a few more than that. And then you get back into, the bar and the taxidermy place. There's like an auction house there now.
So I'm just here, Chairman, you would like us to revert that one parcel that's to the right back to neighbor residential and include all of the ones to the west as mixed use? Am I hearing you correctly?
So I think you keep that one parcel that is on the
East side.
east side the way it is.
Uh-huh.
It's basically Dollar General, isn't it?
Yep. And then we would extend that. Now, if we want to have a discussion about not going all the way to Banfield, that would be one thing, but I mean, some of that up there towards Banfield is the bar and that taxidermy, it's really, there is the 6 or 7 homes there that are in a row. They're very small little parcels bunched together there, and then everything else there is already either has currently or has had a business of some type operating out of there.
I think from Meacham to Banfield ought to be the mixed use.
Yes,
Because it
so
already is.
essentially, except for those six parcels there.
All right, what about the parcels, I'll just show you where they are, because I don't know where. What about these parcels here
You drive.
that are kind of surrounding, is this Meacham here?
Yes.
That are kind of, along the road, there's a Meacham.
So there are, the 2 small ones are gonna be residences, and then right away you get into the parcels that have the, I guess, little strip mall type like thing there. And then you have more, the 6 or 7 houses, and then you get back in, those last couple of bigger ones are where the,
Are we talking about, where are we talking about now? Point to where we're.
all right, so your question is,
I'm questioning these
all
parcels
right,
down
so
here.
those are all residences.
Okay.
And that's why they're so small there.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
So we would be basically looking to extend the mixed use from Meacham, the intersection here, up here. We would not include those parcels.
And what about these 3 little parcels here? Are those residences? Looks like you have a drive that goes in.
I believe those are,
Residential?
yes.
All right, so should we be excluding those or keeping?
Yeah, so if you're looking at the intersection, yeah, there's the three little squares there
Yes.
that are residences.
Mm-hmm.
You would want to exclude that, and so you would basically start from that next biggest parcel up.
Gotcha, and then, but everything up to, on that side, up to Banfield, should be part included in the mixed use?
I think so.
Okay, we can do that, all right. Sorry about that, got that wrong.
All right, does that make sense? Is that what we were trying to get across there, Barry?
So,
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to add on that particular issue?
and that would essentially allow for like commercial stuff too, then mixed use.
Well, it allow for the mixed, you know, what we
somebody wanted to
have in
bring
the
in-
zoning is mixed use, yes.
Yeah, so you wanted to
And then a store.
have a store, or.
Yes.
We talked about, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you could, anywhere along there that would encourage you to do that. If you didn't want to be down on Michigan, you could look to that area.
It just gives you more options within the township to have a mixed use where
Yeah.
there's already essentially mixed use going on. And again, that's only it's the 150, you know, it's the 150 feet setback from
Well-
the edge.
So we did not do that actually there.
Okay, so we didn't do that
We
there.
did not, no, so the only place we did the 150-foot set.
Is on
setback
Michigan?
Is on Michigan.
Okay.
Everything else is going by the parcel.
All right.
We can do that, but, you know, in terms of the village, we kept everything based on the parcels that are there.
And the reasoning for doing it one way and not the other is,
Is, the difference is sort of, how, creating sort of a main commercial corridor.
Okay.
Right, versus a neighborhood, I think is
Okay.
really the way I would express it.
all right.
Yeah.
So in layman's terms, one is more about protecting the neighborhoods behind on Michigan Avenue and, okay.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, that makes sense to me, being explained that way. Yeah. All right. And then we had the industrial zone down there by a river. Or no, we were doing the enterprise?
Enterprise.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd like to know the
Okay,
definition of that a little bit. I know it's on page 36 in the master plan, but
okay.
I just wanted a little bit better clarification on the enterprise.
Sure.
So,
Enterprise is essentially, it's a mix of industrial and commercial. So when you think of mixed use as a mix of commercial and residential, enterprise takes the other side and leans more towards industrial, but it's commercial and industrial uses, principal permitted uses. And within that, I mean, you can, you know, say light versus heavy, right? We also have kept one industrial classification, which, you know, again, we haven't gotten to, you know, into the zoning yet, but, I think we only have, we've only suggested in terms of zoning plan, one industrial use specifically, like, in terms of the district, which would ostensibly allow for light and heavy, but enterprise, you can also modify that. The idea of enterprise is, it's a mixture of commercial and, you know, and industrial uses that would be allowed. And you can say, since it's its own district, you can say light industrial and define, and again, when it comes to the zoning ordinance, you know, you're going to have your list of principal permitted uses, so, you know, you don't want to allow heavy industry on enterprise, you don't have to, right? You know, it all depends on what the township wants. But, you know, those two areas, both Bedford, you know, south of Marvin, right, north of R Drive, and then that other section by Custer, you know, right, as of right now, are down for enterprise.
Answer your question, Bert?
yes.
Were there any other changes that we needed to review just to make sure that they were accurate from the last time? I believe it was just the three. That's not true. Morgan Road.
Oh, right, yes.
We were potentially looking at doing an extension of
Anywhere?
mixed use, I believe.
Show me where.
Yes.
Oh, shoot, we messed it up. Where's it? All right.
That's our drive, is it not?
yeah.
Oh,
that's
isn't it?
Our drive.
Or is it O?
Our drive is Kirby.
Our drive
Okay,
is
yeah.
Kirby, I think it's O.
Morgan is actually O Drive.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
Down here.
All right, there we go. Kevin's got us pointed in the right direction.
All right.
So we're just down, yep, right there.
So which of the, okay,
All right, so that is,
which of the parcels that you wanted included as far as the mixed?
so
use?
if I remember correctly, the discussion was, we were solely talking about from North Avenue, not quite down to Hubbard, correct? And we were only talking about
Yes.
the north side of the road, I thought?
You may have to just mark up mine.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, it's it'd be easier that way.
And that's
Alright,
the
so
side that
we're-
has the two churches.
Yep,
One
so
is,
this, we're talking about this
Oh, yeah, okay.
right here.
And you're talking about a 150-foot setback? in this
Correct,
case?
yes.
Okay,
That is
Alright.
what we discussed.
okay, got it, right, I apologize. All right, so all the way to 5 Mile, right? To stop at 5 Mile?
Yes, that is what we discussed,
And on
yes.
the north side only.
And on the north side only.
And this, and the other, and these we're gonna leave the same, these parcels, the other fully mixed use that are?
Yes,
on the border?
correct.
Okay, all right, yeah, we'll make that change.
All right, so those were the four big ones last time. All of them looked correct except for that O drive, which will get corrected now at this point. Is there any other discussion that we'd like to have regarding the land use map and the proposed future changes? Kevin, did you?
This will be coming back for the changes, right?
Yes, it'll come back for the
Okay.
changes, and then I would assume that at that point, we will look to send it over.
is there?
I guess I'm really surprised that all this area over here, which
I
is
was
nothing
gonna
but
say
houses,
that isn't.
isn't the
neighborhood
same as what this
residential.
is.
Okay, what area are we talking about?
Kirby,
It's Kirby, but it's the
Kirby
other
from
side.
37 over to Wabascan, it's all houses. I guess there's, I don't know, they have other,
Show me where you're gonna get, Kevin, sorry.
I'm not saying you have to change it, I'm just saying there's
So 37's there.
more
We're talking
houses there than
about
there is over here.
Down,
there's more land.
down this here, all the way down.
Right, well,
So,
yeah.
Raphael, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay,
I mean, I
sorry.
have a couple myself as to why that is not that way. So, yes, that is all houses there. I'm sorry, I just jumped the gun
No,
right
no,
over
good, I
that.
don't want, no.
I'll talk and
I
then you
want
can.
review.
That is all houses there, but if you take a look at particularly the south side of the road, you're talking about a ton of larger parcels,
Mhm.
much bigger than what we've already, for future use. I mean, I don't know,
I guess what is the difference between rural residential and neighborhood residential?
0.5 units per acre versus up to 4 units per acre.
For neighborhood residential's up to 4. So you're
Correct.
talking 2 duplexes.
Potentially, per acre, yes.
Don't even give you enough room to sneeze, let alone.
We can also make that, we can also lower that. We can also lower that, I mean, that was, again, from our experience, we talked about it, but we can also make it 2 units. I mean, that's a change we're happy to make. If that would be best for the township. But it is 0.5 units per acre, I think, without exception in rural residential.
Okay.
That's, entirely the decision of, the commission. Purview of the commissioners.
Yeah, I think we had focused on the neighborhood residential where we did. This has to be reviewed every 5 years if these areas continue to be divided up and developed like that, we can extend it at that point.
I mean, I would agree there, if you just take, if you compare the two sections, obviously there are 3 real dense areas in the one that we are trying to extend right now. There's only 1 dense area. And I mean, I don't know how much of that is, swamp there behind Peaceful Valley anyway. I don't necessarily know if it does anybody any favors to try and develop that anyway.
Well, it's obviously something that could be revisited on that one,
Yeah,
up there, especially along Kirby.
I mean, only I would also say is, in the commission is, you know, one thing that we're trying to avoid, obviously, is, you know, kind of reinforcing a pattern of piecemeal development, right? Which is, you know, what we're kind of seeing in a lot of ways here. So, you know, we obviously can't sort of cherry pick, you know,
Right.
which ones should be, you know, should be neighborhood residential. The, you know, the idea is, you know, I guess just keeps coming back to, you know, where does the township want to see growth? You know, where does it want to maintain, you know, rural character, right? And, you know, we can move that growth boundary, if you will, north-south, however you want. You know, I would just caution against trying to sort of, you know, and we can even, you know, as we've seen, like even with Dana Drive, we can kind of like, you know, do some squiggly lines, but what we don't want to see is just sort of, you know, parcel by parcel.
Right.
I mean, I would agree. This can be revisited, you know, again. Obviously, this is just where we think we want to see the growth, and it makes sense to see it on the one side and not the other, because it's already denser over there.
Right.
So,
Whatever would be more advantageous to their residents, I would think, too.
I would
So,
think, I personally would think at this time, you know, trying to center around, you know, closer to the Michigan Avenue corridor and where there's already some density occurring would make sense at this time.
Okay.
Any other comments, changes? Okay. All right, Raphael, we look forward to seeing those changes, hopefully for the last time.
Just one clarification.
Yes.
In terms of the corporate land use, the density for neighborhoods, are we okay keeping the language in up to 4 units per acre?
based on your recommendation, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to, we would lean heavily on what your recommendation is, obviously. You see a lot of township master plans. I would have to, full disclosure, go and pull some of the other township stuff, of our neighboring townships, to see if they are they 4, are they 2, are they 3, are they 10, you know, whatever. 4 seems feasible to me, but I mean, you know, I would think we would leave that at 4.
Yeah.
And it's only allowing up to 2, you know, up to 2-family homes, so it's not 4-family or,
Right.
you know.
So to clarify, we'll leave that at 4.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the solar ordinance. So obviously, this is quite a bit larger than what we have now. 14 pages instead of 3. We had a couple of questions that we needed clarification on. The biggest one was the wetlands setbacks.
Point to page, Chairman.
Let's see, I believe we are on page 7. Yeah, 7. So everything that we had looked at said 50. We had all made the comment that we wanted more than that. We have it in there at 200. And I don't want to put Seth on the spot, but I guess I will. He has reviewed it, and he does think that that is, you know, appropriate enough of a setback that, you know, not to say that it can't be challenged, but it's not excessive. And then we have a little bit of leeway there because you're talking about a wetland in the environment and all those other things. Obviously, we're 300 feet on the non-participating parcel. We're 200 feet from the private road or right-of-way. I did have a thought on that, and I you know, we had kind of decided on 200 feet. I mean, I don't know, Seth, maybe you would caution me against it. I kind of would like to see it be the same as the non-participating parcel and not have it different. Be 300 feet and 300 feet. Just from this instance only, obviously, so that the 300 feet on the non-participating parcel protects whatever, you know, resident is not participating. But, part of the large concern from the residents that we heard from was, being able to see it, or whatever. So if we had the extra 100 feet for their buffer to be in, I think that would be good and, provide ample distance from the roadway. I mean, we'd love 1,000 feet, but that's just not feasible, obviously, and 300 feet gets pretty short pretty quick, obviously, but. That was one change that I would like to discuss making.
You said 50 feet, was that D?
So it's C, everything that we looked at, in the packets that we had for the last meeting, a lot of townships were at 50 feet, and we had expressed that we wanted to be,
Oh, I'm looking at the top.
larger than that.
Apologies, John, I
Page
think,
two.
I know
I'm on
this is, or
seven.
D probably should say, just to clarify, it's a lot line of a neighboring participating parcel. So-
Correct, yes, so we'll get to that clarification in just
It's just on page eight.
just a sec.
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
No, you're all right.
You got a different page on it.
I printed out what was emailed to me.
You did?
Did he provide you?
Oh, I have a new, oh,
Okay,
hold on.
Do you
I
have
printed
it,
out what was emailed.
do you have it in there, or do you need it?
I think it was a different one.
I might have
I have it, it's here.
I have an extra copy.
I would agree with 300
There's
feet.
extra one.
You said page 7?
It's 7.
Yep.
Oh, so was I looking at the old one then?
You must have been.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so the discussion is, to go to 300 feet?
Yes, from the public-private road right away. Seth, do you think that
Yeah, I
is
think that's-
is appropriate?
And keep in mind too, there's a relief mechanism, when if they go and apply for a variance and they have an issue with the design and think that they have a practical difficulty, they could go to the ZBA.
So D is gonna be 300, right?
Yes.
Okay, but I do have a question about D. Where
Yep.
it says there shall be a 50-foot setback requirement from the lot line of the neighboring parcel.
So that's supposed to be participating parcel, correct, Raphael?
Neighboring and, yeah, neighboring participating.
Okay.
And there was some question there as to whether or not we even needed that in there, correct?
I mean, I think it's, now that we're differentiating between the non-participating, and this was a big question, when we did this, we've had other townships, but I think that since you're differentiating between non-participating and participating, just to maintain the integrity of the lot, it's a nice thing to have, right? So, we're saying that you can't just, because you have a leasehold on, 10 parcels, doesn't mean you can kind of just, regardless of the lot lines, the property lines, just kind of put something out, because if somebody would change his hands, that kind of thing. I mean, that's my take on it, I don't know, is that, how do you feel about that?
I've seen it both ways, where, it's continuous for all participating parcels, or what Raphael is saying, of, some sort of setback to maintain some sort of like lot line integrity, so I think 50 feet's, reasonable, so it's really what the planning commission's pleasure is at that point.
I mean, I think 50 feet's enough to keep the integrity of the lot line, so, I mean, and it's not costing them that much of their real estate, I guess.
Typically, there's space in between solar.
Anyway, period,
I don't think
yeah.
it'd be difficult to plan there.
I guess I'm on page 4.
Okay,
So C3, this reads, edge of rooftop, solar panels attached to rooftop shall not be set back a minimum of 2 feet.
Should be, shall be set
Shall
back.
be.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I wanted to question that one too.
and the 2 feet is what we came to an agreement on. I know there was some talk about whether it needed to be less or more. I think 2 feet is appropriate, so they can access the roof, correct?
For clarification, are you talking drip edge, rake, or ridge cap? Ridge,
Drip edge.
Yeah.
It was drip edge.
what about the rake on the side? That was where everybody was pushing as far as the solar companies. They were really mad because they couldn't, because if they moved it over, then they could put a whole nother row on there. but looking at it from what I'm reading from the fire protection, they need to be able to get up there so they can vent the roof, vent the structure.
So this, I think,
So-
the way this is reading to me is any edge.
Any edge, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, could that be more clarified? So,
I mean, what were the terms you used? I'm not a builder.
drip edge,
Drip, all right, so.
Obvious-
yeah, so that
obviously
drip
the
edge, you've got
eaves.
This is the drip edge, right, down, right,
then the rake is the end,
okay.
but normally it's a barrier, so they can get up on it.
I mean, can you just, put in there, 2 feet perimeter around,
That would be,
the entire structure or something, and dumb it down for everybody?
So, yeah.
Myself included? I mean,
There shall be a 2-foot, perimeter setback
Yep.
from, okay, yeah, there shall be, we can just put it on, yeah.
Okay.
There shall be
Does that address that concern
Mhm.
for you, Kelly?
That reads better.
I
Yeah.
don't think I'm probably going to be having solar panels on top of my house, but for somebody else and they happen to get a
Sure.
fire, they need to be able to
Okay.
service that structure.
We have a ladder truck.
Yeah.
They don't always
We
go
have a
out.
Very expensive
They
ladder
don't-
truck.
they don't always go out, not on a small one.
And I'll Barry. Calm down over there. Any other little clarifications there?
On the buffering, page 8.
Okay. Yes.
So evergreen trees, so we've got the mature trees to be planted, and 1 row on a 4-foot high berm.
Correct.
Was just 1 row on there? I thought we had,
What is it, double?
it does call for a double row, 1 row on the berm. I was thinking, my mental picture was a berm that supported both rows, 2 rows.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I see what you're
That
asking.
would be
So,
Very
I
large
mean,
berm.
I guess,
acre worth of burn.
and Seth had kind of talked to me about, the 12 feet high, is probably gonna be where we start to get a little bit of maybe pushback from,
I mean, it's on the higher side, and we talked about maybe having some sort of provision in there that would allow, like the planning commission some discretion about that, 'cause especially, we don't know, I don't know if you're ever gonna get an application. But
Sure.
For example, if there's part of the parcel that has significant, trees and, that provides more, a much thicker buffer line than what is in here, maybe you don't need an additional buffer line, along that part of the parcel. Whereas where it's wide open and it bus residential uses, then yeah, for sure.
Right.
So you could add in some language that will allow you some discretion to address that. I think, and I talked to Rafi and I've talked about that. And depends on what type of solar panels you get too, because I think I get what you're getting at. The 12-foot high tree on a 4-foot berm that's 16 feet, and I think the maximum height at max deviation, if those panels are moving throughout the day, is about 16 feet. So the idea is to shroud the project from view, right? That's the idea.
That's been
essentially.
the biggest complaint.
Essentially immediately, not with a
Not
4-foot
5
tree
years.
and 10 years from now, we
Right.
don't look at it every time we drive down the road.
And if, another example could be if they just put in, because some of these panels are they're flat, at night, but then during the day, they do that, they follow the sun. But if they have a plan that is just flat, do you need, it's stationary, do you need 16 feet or, is 12 enough or something? Just a mechanism in there that gives the planning commission some discretion, that's all.
And there is, if you look at 10AI2, there already is some language in there, and I can change that a little bit to say, to what Seth's talking about, that, whether, or may require additional plantings, or, may waive this requirement, I can find language that'll give you guys that authority. Seth and I talked about it, and we don't really think it's not a setback issue, it's not a dimensional issue, it's a landscaping issue. So it's really something that the planning commission has purview over, jurisdiction over, so, I can, make that language up.
Yeah, I don't see 12 feet high as exclusionary.
Okay.
I don't, they have, it's a use, it's a special land use, they have to comply with certain standards, so that's just a standard the township feels is reasonable. I mean, anyone could challenge the ordinance for any reason.
Right.
Okay, we have to substantiate why we have that number, and I think that would come more towards probably planning commission review, because if there's a provision in there that gives you some flexibility, you just have to justify your reasoning for not, you know, reducing that 12-foot requirement. That's what it comes to.
Okay.
And
I get,
think you know, surrounding, you know, if the butts are an adjacent residential use, I mean, I think that's pretty solid to screen.
Okay.
From that property.
To Barry's question though, do we want to change that to both of those rows on the berm or just one? I mean, it reads at least one. I mean, that to me it would be in our purview if we decided that we wanted both of them on there. We could, you know, we don't have to spell that out necessarily. Because that's what your question, you know, do we want to stipulate it right from the get-go? 2 berms, 12-foot trees on there? From a landscaping perspective, having, you know, doing this for a living.
May I interject
Yes, sure,
something?
you sure can.
First of all, to get a berm big enough, wide enough to plant 2 rows of trees 10 feet apart, you're talking half the county worth of dirt moved up there. Now, if that's what we want, that's what we want, but the other is, and also where it says 12 feet high at the time of planting, you put a 12 foot tall, and that's after 10 foot, it's premium, because you're talking a ball and burlap tree, live tree. After 10 feet, it is premium price. So, and if you're talking fir tree, they grow 6 to a foot, 18 inches a year, so, on that. So just to let, I would imagine that's what they would be planting. I can't imagine them planting arborvitae or anything like that, but.
I mean, right.
I mean, I think a lot of this may come down to, you know, number 2, and maybe just modifying the language to say the planning commission may modify these requirements depending on, you know, the application being presented. You know, I think we can make sure there's more, make it very clear that the planning commission has the, you know, the purview to make changes, whether they be beefing up requirements, waiving requirements, and just making that clear. You know, and you know, to whether or not, you know, you all choose to make it, you know, 2 birds or 1, you know, it's your decision. But personally, I think, you know, just having, you know, beefing up the language or making it very clear that, you know, that planning commission reserves the right to modify these landscaping requirements.
I would be okay with that,
So would I.
rather than just having it right from the get-go, because I mean, we should take this on a case-by-case basis
Right.
anyway, depending on,
Discretion.
you know, what parcels are adjacent or not adjacent, what's left there, what isn't, you know, I mean, obviously, our requirements are gonna be totally different, you know, if we're talking about, you know, Hellbort Farms over on Collier, you know, there's a ton of woods there that we would wanna insist that you maintain that buffer, the natural buffer. If we're talking about, you know, some open farm field, well, I mean, obviously, there's no buffer there, so that's
Right.
when the beefier,
And that's what, if you go down N Drive and look at that,
Yeah.
there are some nice little evergreens planted, you know, about yay tall. And the field is lower than the road, so your
right?
residents that have come to meetings have expressed, you know, displeasure at that site. That's what the idea of a berm with a mature tree. And if you're gonna come in and spend $1 billion on a project, we're going to request that you do it
Sure.
in a way that's pleasing to the residents that don't want it at all.
Right.
But we can't exclude it without getting into,
A big
you know,
time legal battle.
substantial
Sure.
legal bills when they sue us.
Mm-hmm.
But by putting some, you know,
I'm good with this.
thought out,
Putting some
Restrictions
parameters in
on it.
place.
Yeah.
then just like some Dollar Generals are just steel sided, some are nice brick sided. It depends on how
How the conditional use is set up in the first
Yeah.
place, yeah. I'm okay with them strengthening the language and leaving it with the 1 berm and, you know, at our discretion, if everybody else is on board with that.
Yeah.
I am.
Yep.
So that's what we would like to do there, is, I guess, you're talking about specifically number 2 there in section A, strengthening that language a little bit more.
Yeah, and there's also, I'll point out, 10A2, Roman numeral 2, existing treated woodlands. It talks about waiving 1A, I can say waive or modify, just to make that clear as well.
Okay.
And just so you guys know, I mean, you could attach all sorts of conditions to any approval. And I've attached conditions that require landscape plans, require them to replace it. Like, if there's a landscaping plan, these trees, if they die, they have to replace them, they have to hire a local arborist to take care of them. I mean, this is a thorough ordinance, the ones I've done before have been thorough ordinances, and we still attach somewhere between 26 and 30 conditions. So it's.
Per application.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, is there anything else? I know, Seth, you had some comments you'd like to share about the decommissioning in particular, the bond.
So, just a couple things. Page 10, number 16, the road damage, totally understand where we're coming from on this. Gotta look into that a little bit closer because we don't have jurisdiction over our roads. And so, like, when I've seen it before is whether or not we can actually bind the county to our ordinance, okay, regarding their roads. 1.25 million, I don't know where that number comes from for a bond. And if there is a challenge, it's like an arbitrary number that got picked up, we'd have to be able to justify that. So I'm not sure where that number came from. I've seen conditions get attached that an applicant must get any permissions regarding road usage, routes that they drive from the county, and post a bond as required by the county. Because ultimately, counties are responsible for the roads and townships. I know that's not always, you tell them, pave a road, it's not like they do it necessarily a lot of times.
Right.
We're fronting that bill. But I'm just saying, as far as townships, who has jurisdiction, it's technically the county. So, but again, what you're looking for in 16 can still be achieved.
Okay.
It's just whether it's a condition or whether it's an ordinance, I think it's just something we have to look at a little closer.
Okay.
And then, Raphael, I saw that coming.
Oh, shoot, calendar, yeah.
Page 12, not recommending revisions here, but just on page 12, the paragraph B, the escrow fee, I think that's very important to have, and your ordinance does. Costs went up pretty quick with solar applications, and 15,000 is a good number. I've seen them as low as 10, as high as 35,000. 15 is good, and I think was a strong provision in here. It says that when the balance drops below 5,000, the applicant has to replenish it within a certain amount of time. Okay, so if you ever get an application, whether it's solar or anything else, and run an escrow, if they drop below that threshold, stop processing their application. Okay, until they replenish. Because if you don't, you keep going, they're not going to pay anything into a lawsuit. It's not fun. We've dealt with that before. Okay, so I thought that was a solid provision you have there. E, I thought it's good as municipal civil infraction citation. All we want is compliance with our ordinance. Going that route is the way to get there.
Okay.
Page 13, abandonment removal, 25 and 26, I'm good with that. 27, decommissioning. Yeah, the whole thing with decommissioning is someday this project's not gonna be online anymore. When I say online, like power, okay? Typically how it works is a solar company will negotiate a power agreement with Consumers Energy, DTE, whoever it is, okay? It's usually 20 years, subject to another 20-year renewal. So you could be looking at a 40-year project, okay? And then at the end of those 40 years, they make a choice. Do we repower our solar panels, put new ones on there and try to get a new power agreement, or do we decommission it, which means take it out? Okay, so if they're decommissioning it, what we need to happen is they need to be able to take it out themselves or post a bond so the township can do it, because we can't afford to remove the solar panels, the electrical, the infrastructure. They have to, if there's concrete around, they have to do that. We have to post a bond so we could draw on that bond and we can pay to have it done. I want to see a term in there about actual cost of decommissioning. So what'll happen is they'll submit a decommissioning plan that'll say how exactly they're going to decommission this project. And then they're going to show you how much it costs. They might say salvage value X amount of dollars, because we could salvage the panels on a third market, or we could salvage, we could scrap the metal. I don't care about salvage value. If they want to salvage their property, that's their business, okay? We need the actual cost, because the salvage value and the actual cost sometimes are two very different numbers, okay? So they'll give you a salvage value. An engineer will do it, they'll stamp it, they'll give it to you. That's fantastic. I want the township engineer to look at it and confirm those numbers. Okay, the bond here is 125%. I've used 125% in other townships, haven't gotten pushback. So what that means is, for example, if the engineers say it's $500,000 to decommission the plan, they have, or to, yeah, the project, they have to post a bonding amount of 125,000. So whatever that number is, okay, that's what they have to post. The reason being is because we're going to revisit this bond under this ordinance every 2 years to make sure it's up to date. So that 2-year gap, that addresses inflation. So for today, it costs 500,000, maybe in 2024, it costs, 550,000. Okay, so we don't want to be short if we ever have to decommission that project. That's the whole purpose of it. Something I always tell townships is, you gotta keep up on that, okay? Because it's gonna come back in front of the planning commission, you have to, and it says every 2 years, so every 2 years, we gotta be revisiting it. Okay, and the solar companies pay for everything, that's what that escrow fee's for. Okay, they pay for, planners fees, attorneys fees, engineering fees, everything. Okay, we're not gonna absorb costs here, these projects cost tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars, so they can afford it, okay? So those, those are my comments. I think this ordinance is largely taken from another township that's currently in effect right now. I don't know, have they had a project go through?
I think they may have just finished their 30-day review. They may not have the whole
So it's not in
hearing,
effect.
but it was, no, it's not in effect.
Okay.
But this was then, but I want to say this is probably in a different township already,
Yeah.
When I came into it, it was, it was in Newton County. But, again, working with their attorney, they, similar stuff, under their review.
Yeah. I think maybe one of the other comments I had was if zoning districts, so solar farms in the ag district, page 5, paragraph 1, zoning districts in ag. Just looking at your future land use map, and that guides, the future growth of the township. I don't see ag in there, so maybe just something to keep in mind if you're gonna keep solar around where it's, which zoning districts it's gonna go in. I'm not as up to speed on your master plan, as the rest of you are, but that's just, something to think about.
So Raphael, we should probably change that then to,
Residential open space.
yep. 'Cause
Yeah,
that,
the only reason that was kept in was because it was kind of a chicken and the egg thing, right? Which is gonna get passed first.
Sure.
And I think we were going with sort of the sense of urgency initially, but, if the sense, so the sense in other words that the solar ordinance is gonna be adopted before the master plan, we would wanna keep the existing zoning district in there, what's currently there, but if it's the opposite, then I have no problem changing it, to a rural residential and open space.
So what's our time frame? You're doing both of them, so, and what's our process on solar as opposed to master?
So with the solar ordinance, the way the process is, and I'm not sure where the board is, or the commission is as far as being comfortable with what's in here, but the next step would be, you could either come back for another PC meeting to further discuss with the revisions. If you're comfortable with where the ordinance is and what the revisions are, you could set it for public hearing, and then Raphael can make those revisions. We come back at the public hearing, and then you hold your public hearing and make a recommendation to the township board, either approval or denial. It goes over to the county. You have the county planning commission, county, they get 30 days to review it, and then it goes to the township board where it goes up for first read and then adoption at a subsequent meeting. That's the procedure of these adopting the ordinance.
Where, the master plan, talked about before, the public hearing really, so it actually needs to go out for review before the public hearing. So, you would essentially approve it, or refer it to the township board for a vote. The vote would be then to distribute it, and then there's a 62-day review period. That's to allow both for the county, but also all neighboring municipalities to review it. So it's a longer one. Then comes back, the township board can choose to respond if they receive any comments, and then it goes to a public hearing. So
that to me makes it sound like the solar is gonna go before the master plan. Regardless of whether we, wait, see these changes on paper, and then, at our next meeting, send it on down the line, I would still think that the solar is gonna go first. So then we need to leave it as the agricultural now, and then go through the process, and then we would just, amend the ordinance after that?
It's be a text amendment ordinance.
Okay.
I mean, whatever page that was on, page 5, would just be an ordinance, revising it from ag to whatever zoning district classification it becomes.
Does that answer that question, Barry? Okay. Does everybody understand kind of what the holdup was there on just the verbiage? Because the solar will probably get adopted before the revisions to the master plan, so we need to have the correct label in there.
Okay. Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, so originally, the original zoning ordinance was like, regarding solar was about 3 pages, is that what I heard?
Yeah.
So, I don't know when that went into effect, it was probably, what, 5-6 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, 2015, something like
So
that.
even, like, an ordinance from 2015, I don't think is like very old necessarily, okay, but solar is pretty new in Michigan. So an ordinance that is from 2015, 2016, 2019 is probably a bit antiquated. And that's why you see not just Bedford, but a lot of townships revisiting it, because especially in Calhoun County, there is a ton of solar in Calhoun County, I think, as you probably know. So a lot of municipalities here and other places are updating their zoning ordinances. So, the whole thing is exclusionary zoning. Solar companies haven't been suing townships yet. I don't know how long it's gonna last. Okay, the wind turbines, or like wind farms started like that, and now they do sue townships from what I see. So I don't think this is exclusionary. Exclusionary means you prohibit a use that is otherwise allowed and a demonstrated need. What we're seeing in Michigan is the demonstrated need is being articulated from the state. Okay, that's the state's policy, because they want to see more of this renewable energy. So because of that, you see a lot of municipalities, townships, cities, villages updating their zoning ordinances, which is exactly what they're doing. And I think, when you guys were asking me about setback standards and things like that, I mean, I always take the position, like, if this is what your township wants, then you put in what you want, and you defend the township's position if it ever gets challenged, instead of just acquiescing to the developer. Okay, so with that said, I mean, I do think that it is defendable, and they do have a relief mechanism in the ZBA. So they would have to go to the ZBA. There's no guarantee they get the relief they want, but that's still an administrative remedy that they would have to exhaust first.
Okay.
I have just a quick question. Steph, you talked about the language that you wanted to see regarding, I think it was page 13, the amendment. Yeah.
I'd like to see something that says
Actual cost, you mentioned?
actual cost, and they have to submit a decommissioning plan. I don't see what it says, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anything that says decommissioning plan.
Would you want to review that?
Yeah, I can do that part of that.
Okay, all right, cool. Just want to make sure we're.
That's totally fine.
Yeah. Division of labor here. So I can make these requests, once the, obviously, commission is done with discussion, I'm happy to make my revisions, and I can send them to staff.
Okay.
And then, send it on to you
Yeah,
guys.
and just so you know, when you get to the public hearing, like, I don't know if the board's commission's gonna set up a public hearing tonight or not, but you can amend the ordinance at the public hearing. Okay, you can't add new provisions that come out of left field, but if it's something that's existing and you revise a few words or you cut a section, that's fine. Okay, I wasn't sure. I don't think you can make like extreme substantive revisions, but you can put it.
Okay.
I just have a question.
Yes, Barb?
Okay, I have a question, probably silly, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. A builder comes into town and he takes up a parcel of land to build maybe 5 houses or 8 to 10 houses. And he decides, he has the bright idea that he wants to do solar. So he wants to put in a grid to connect all those homes. Is that considered small scale or large scale? If that should happen. I doubt if it would happen, but I'm just
I'm
curious.
gonna need a higher math now.
And they're all in a little cul-de-sac, all to themselves.
So we have to look.
And
we have to look
they're
and
in
see what the
agreement.
definition
It's the
is.
off-grid living
Small scale
neighborhood.
versus, small scale, so we have to look, I
Yeah,
would look, first look at the definition of solar,
I did, of the small scale and the large scale.
yes.
Yeah, I did, but still, this
Solar
kind of
farm
falls
versus-
in the cracks, you know, a little bit.
So when
I mean, I'm not saying it would ever happen, but,
Right. No, it's a good question. So I'm looking at small-scale solar energy system, a single residential or
Yeah.
small business
Yes.
scale solar.
Yes.
So I'm reading a single residential or small business on-site purposes. So if we're starting to connect multiple units,
right, 5
I
of
think that
them
might fall outside the scope of.
of small
Small
scale.
It's no longer
Okay, I just
residential.
wanted
I don't think that
clarification.
yeah, I don't think that falls into solar farm either, because it's still not.
Right, it's not
commercial.
solar farm.
So it brings back to if it's, it might not, we have to look at it closer, I don't know if it'd be allowed, given those circumstances. Not everyone would be able to have their own system.
Yeah,
independently.
each house would have their own panels, but they'd all connect to one grid. You see what I'm saying?
On-site purposes, not.
On-site purpose for that community, that little small cul-de-sac of homes.
I would say on-site, if it's all part of the same parcel owned by somebody, I would think that would be like an on-site thing.
Well, like a hippie commune?
I mean, it would
That'd
come
be
in,
like-
yeah, like a
They're common
commune,
enough.
exactly.
That'd be like
Of
Danny
course,
Drive,
I
having-
doubt if it would ever happen, because, you know, they've got the decommissioning, they've got all of this money they've got to pay up front to ensure us that if somebody moves, you know,
Well, so
because in
also-
6
Right.
months, 6 months of abandonment means it has to be removed.
But I think to Seth's point though, like it wouldn't be allowed, period, because it doesn't fall within one of the two
The-
descriptions that we have.
That's what I want
Can I-
to be
if I
clear.
may,
Yep.
Commissioner, so you have to keep in mind, C5, lot coverage. No more than 20% of lot area or 20 acres, whichever is less, on any lot shall be covered by a ground-mounted small-scale solar energy. So my short answer is that theoretically, yes, they could do this if it's just for on-site consumption, but they would still have to, you know, I mean, how large a lot are we talking about, right? And then it could be, you know, if it's, you know, less than 20 acres, it can be no more than 20% of lot area. So how much is that gonna take up?
They'd be close together, wouldn't they? Pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the short answer to that question, is
Sure.
they would be limited to that lot coverage, and which is something you could theoretically play with.
But that wouldn't necessarily even apply, because if the builders come in, he's gonna have 5 parcels, each one is its own lot.
Right.
So, I mean, that,
So,
I would say they would not be able to do that.
right, and if,
I would hope
I'd
not.
like to see, like, I mean, they have to submit like a site plan or something.
Right.
Preliminarily, and then, you know, you make a call, and if it's not allowed, they could always submit an application for a text amendment to allow something like that. And then, you know, the planning commission can take it off. But they can't get a variance, then they have to use a variance. So, it's not really.
And, you know, and small scale is still a special use approval by our.
That's true.
It's not principal permitted.
Right,
Um,
okay.
So,
Well, thank you.
sure, it's a good question.
I'm thinking earth ships over here, and I love this idea.
Anything else on the solar?
What about that hippie commune thing?
I'm telling you. I would be in an earth ship in a heartbeat if I could. Look it up.
Okay, next on the agenda, number 9, the last opportunity for public comment. This public comment can be used for anything that you'd like to speak on.
Opening it at what time? 8?
8.
Okay.
8:08, looks like.
I don't usually go in front of the camera, but she had some real good questions, because, let me read this Penfield ordinance. Discharge of a firearm. Any person who discharges any firearm within the township is guilty of an offense, except on agricultural property. And when you start zoning people's property, then all you have to do is go to the state and invoke MCL 123.1104, and people can no longer fire guns on their property. It's happened to me. I'm on O Drive, Morgan Road. I have 18 acres, and I have access to the 45 in back of me, and I cannot hunt my property or my neighbor's property who's given me access unless I use air guns. Thank you.
You didn't state your name, I'm sorry.
Don Cash.
Yes.
All right, thank you for that. Is there anybody else that has public comment?
Hello, I'm Michael, former Bedford Township Supervisor. And people want to continue to interrupt and say things like recall, which is hilarious because it doesn't matter, because the knowledge of the position and the job is what I have. That's what the announcement of the title is for. For all of the people that like to call it out, they're the ones that care about it. It's hilarious. So, some of my knowledge and understanding of this position and what you guys are doing. The professional was hired because our plan that we had previously, if you look at it, was not a professional plan. We have a charter township which has specific rules and regulations that govern you. It's pretty simple. All of you, I hope, have looked up the Charter Act and read it. I hope you have. If you haven't, do it, please. And then compare what we are doing in our township versus what that says you're supposed to be doing, okay? Because all of this planning professionally done, the way all of the things included are being done, that's required by law for you to do as a charter township. We've had none of that previously. So that's why professionals needed to be hired, because we didn't have professionals able to do it on our board. And it's proven because of the previous plan that we've had. Now, this has also been proven when you look at the parks plan. What happened finally when we got the parks plan done? We got a lot of money now coming for the parks, and we got a lot of cool things going. This is the same thing why we need to push the fire department to do the planning as well. This is why we do the professional planning. Now, from my understanding, based on what he said, and that's what all this planning is he literally said that eventually, really, the farming's gonna be gone, okay? It's gonna be all rural residential. That's my understanding. What you said, I mean, we can say, oh, you can apply for it, and you can try to get variances and all these different things. Yeah, right, that works out real good in the end. What we're talking about here is needing more transparency to the public. You all need voices. You all don't want to be the ones culpable and the ones that are to blame for removing rights of people that are wanting to do things differently on the property because these things get pushed through. I'm glad that we actually have a camera here to record this, which we normally don't have. It's awesome, right? So that this can be documented and shared and people can see it. Now what we need is these documents that you guys are looking at, we need to get these as drafts online for everyone to see, okay? Can you do that, Chairman, please? Because these documents need to be online for everyone to see, because then you're gonna get the real input. You're gonna get people that are gonna see and go, hey, what's going on? And you go, oh, well, we don't want people to come and yell at us. Well, guess what? You need input is what it's about. And so I urge you to get those online so that everyone can have a copy to look at when you're looking at it, and then you can get the true input from the people on what should be happening, because it shouldn't be up to you guys, and it's a hard thing. You don't want it on your shoulders. Get the input from the people.
All right, thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that has public comment at this time?
Melissa McKay, 23386 North Hillbrook Drive. Are we going to be doing anything with wind? Because I'm concerned about our wind ordinance. Do we have that in place? Or is that going to be done?
We already, oh, sorry.
Is that done? I'm sorry.
He
if I-
talks.
Well, we're not supposed to technically engage in a back and forth.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that was the question. Okay, so what are repercussions if, say, they bring in the solar farms and they put up this screen and these beautiful trees, and then they just don't keep them up and they turn into sticks? Is there, what does the township have the ability to come after them and go, come on, no, this is not a screen? I'm just wondering, I'm just wanting to make sure that the township has the ability to go back after them, that they're not in compliance. Because I know like the marijuana growers, every year they're permitted to keep it. And if they do not follow all guidance, then they are not allowed a permit for the following year. So it incentivizes them to stay in compliance. So I don't know if there's anything how that's going to be done either. And I guess that's just it. I am concerned about the gentleman too. I think there probably should be a minimum, like, because I have some acreage, and I want to be able to do what I want to do with my acreage, because I didn't buy that much just to be told I can't possibly shoot a gun. And I think that will lead to more animosity from your residents, and I think that needs to be really considered. So yeah, you're not the bad guy. So, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Does anybody else wish to make a comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment at 8:15. And the next item on the agenda is Planning Commission member time. Barry, would you like to start us off?
So, Seth, can you speak to
Yeah.
that agriculture, that MCL?
So, I mean, I didn't look up the MCL. That's how Penfield decided to regulate discharge of firearms. Okay, in the Charter Township Act, I do believe it addresses the township's authority to regulate firearms. I don't know what Bedford's position is on that, or if they have another. So it's hard for me to comment on that.
Yeah, Mayor, Commissioner, just a comment about related to the agricultural issue. So the plan, as I see moving forward, once we get into the zoning aspect of this, is that is for agriculture to be a principal permitted use in the rural residential and open space district. If there's concern in terms of the, how it's called, we can always rename it the rural residential agricultural and open space district. That's an easy fix.
I'd be in favor of that, because I definitely would never support anything that says somebody can't shoot on, their 5 or 10 acres. There's plenty of land for them to do that.
We can easily
Safety.
rename, I'm sorry.
So, I would be in favor of that.
I as well.
Yeah, I can easily make, it's just change, add no word. I can change that in the future land use plan, and then that would obviously go over to, in terms of the title, right, the zoning district as well.
I think it would be good to keep that name.
Okay.
That in that name.
Yeah, even just agriculture in the name. I didn't even think about shooting a gun, and we have a shooting range. So.
They sent the sheriff to my house, told me.
My husband would have flipped out if I had not considered that, so.
Morgan Road between Purdy and.
Okay, so Raphael, you'll include that in our changes?
Yeah, we can do that, for sure.
Barry, anything else?
No, thank you.
Tony?
And I think you just showed me with the trees, if they fall down, they have to be replaced. I do like the annual, permit renewal thing, where if they fall out of compliance, they can't operate the solar. Again, I don't know if that's what Melissa just said.
I believe it's
No, I
3
think
years.
that's good. I
Question
like
that
that
was
idea.
asked. Do you want me to address it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the question that I think was asked during public comment was, what if the trees they plant die or something, right?
Or the wind knocks them down or something, because we've
Right,
had a
there-
lot of those.
Right, and this gets addressed in the landscaping plan and also in the conditions of any approval, that they're responsible for those trees.
Okay.
So if they have a tree that they plant however many, and something dies, they're responsible to replace it. If they don't do it, if they're in violation of their special land use permit or any condition, then they're in violation of special land use permit. You could cite them for violating that permit and go to the 10th District Court over it. Given what it costs to build these projects, I think that they're gonna, we hope that they would replace that tree, or they would risk getting the special land use permit revoked.
Okay.
So, is there a yearly application fee for the solar? Is that covered in here?
I thought it was every 3. Oh.
I did not.
I don't recall reading it.
Yeah.
Most other ordinances that I've read have 3 years.
Seth, what is your thought on that?
What's that?
Having a yearly I don't think we could.
So, are you thinking because of the marijuana, you get the 5,000? So that's authorized by statute, we don't have that for solar. So
Okay.
what they would have is, they pay that escrow fee, of $15,000. So that's to process the application. If that gets just below $5,000, they have to replenish it. Okay, so once, if there's ever an approval and that gets through, there's not an annual
Okay.
reapplication.
Okay.
Now, if you have to, there are times even after approval that there are additional costs, so I would make them pay for that, but that's not in the form of an application.
Okay.
Okay. So,
And that's why I'm maintaining that escrow is,
yeah,
So important.
it's important.
Okay.
And there's gonna be a time where you're not, burning through that escrow as much as when you're processing the application. But think about the decommissioning bond, like every 2 years, right? So every 2 years, they're gonna give you an updated bond. Their engineer will stamp that bond, that's fine, but we want our guy to take a look at it.
Okay.
And there's gonna be a cost associated to make that work.
Okay.
Connie, anything else?
No, thank you.
Kevin?
No? I
Okay.
don't believe so at this time.
Barb?
I'm okay.
Claudia?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, just in regards to a couple of the comments we heard there from the public, you do see the camera here tonight. That is very important. That is something that we've heard about being a problem. We are in the process of trying to work out the logistics of having one here every single time for every single meeting, for a variety of reasons, other than just so that, we want the public to be able to, view the meeting if they can't come to the meeting, and so on and so forth. But there is a large financial cost, burden to having somebody hired to come in to do that, and we are trying to get answers to that, as far as that goes. As far as getting the documents online, I agree with that. I am gonna try and, I'm new to the chair position, and there is a lot of logistical things, not having somebody in the zoning office to help get, things around and whatnot, so we are gonna actively try and do better. My first task was to make sure that the commission had their packet well in advance, as opposed to what normally, and we did okay, we got it to them a week before this time. We will make efforts to make that available to the public as well. So, with that, I would move to adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 28th at 6:30 PM.
So
And-
Access Vision, your voice, your community.